It was my last day working at the asylum, when I got called on by my resident of psychiatry. He had admitted a patient who was not violent currently, but he had not taken the full history of the patient. So he wanted me to go take a detailed history of why he needed to be admitted before rounds began at 9. I went to the ward at 7 and asked the nurse who was the one that was admitted the previous night. She pointed at him and I was shocked. That was one hell of an attractive man. I looked at the nurse in duty with wide seductive eyes and she mouthed back, "I know." He was that attractive, or maybe the nurse and I shared a type. Although I was told that he was not violent, I felt a sense of dread as I approached him. He was a pretty cheery guy and seemed so normal. It was a pretty long interview as I had enough time. We talked about a lot of things. He was pretty engaging, talked about things I was into. A lot of philosophy books we've read, what he felt about hospitals. He evaded a lot of my questions as to why he was admitted in a psych ward. He however admitted to abusing a lot of drugs, the hard ones. But he had been clean for a while now, or so he said. He was a pretty talented guy, as straight a student, pretty athletic, and was all around a great guy. So why did he abuse the drugs? His light seemed to dim when he looked at me and said, "Because it all seemed so heavy." And I don't know why, but it resonated with me. I thought of all the times I wanted all the pressure to just go away. He further added that the drugs made everything stop. I asked him to elaborate. What he said and did afterwards just chilled me to the bones. Ever since he was a kid, there were a couple of kids who played with him. No one else could see them, but he did. They were his friends. 2 of them were boys and 1 was a girl. He wondered why no one else could see them. He asked other people about them, but no one else could see them. After a while, he tried to pretend they didn't exist because why would no one else see them? That seemed to agitate his friends when he told them that they didn't exist. But he grew up, they didn't. They would talk to him, about him, taunt him. They had such shrill voices that it just left him scared. As he grew up, they started talking about wanting to kill him because he was no more fun. Those little children would often climb atop of him, especially at nights, and they would try and strangle him with all their might. Sometimes he would shake them off, oftentimes he felt suffocated as their voices would whisper in his ears about how amazing it felt to feel him die. He also said that when he found the drugs, the kids went away and he felt alive again. His parents got him in rehab multiple times, but he relapsed back every single time. The suffering was not worth staying sober, but since couple of weeks, he'd been sober. "It's time to die again, they have been coming back," he said. "I'd probably like it if I stayed dead." He turned to me and gave me a dejected look and looked at something beyond me. It was so awkward because when I looked back, I saw nothing. "What is it?" I asked. "They are back, they're behind you. But of course, you don't see them." "Oh, they say you're next," he told me. That was the moment when I felt everything in the room get chilly. He looked as if he had already surrendered. I made up some lame excuse and tried to get the hell away from that place as soon as possible. His parting statement was something I never want to hear again in such context: "I think they like you." This man, barely at 24 years of age, was suffering from schizophrenia and had been having all the 3 hallucinations: visual, auditory and tactile. I couldn't even comprehend what was going through his head. This experience took a toll on me and I just took a leave for that day after taking his history to get my wits in order. I still remember the haunted look on his face and his statement, and it still gives me the chills. I don't know what happened to him, and I didn't have enough courage in me to go to the ward and find out. The mental health facility I worked at was very run down. There was a staircase at the far end of the facility which no one used due to the inadequate lighting and because of its inconvenience. When I started working at the facility, I was advised to steer clear of that staircase, but no one offered any other reasons why other than that it was unsafe. I had no reason to believe otherwise, so I stayed away. It did look dark even with lighting somewhat not quite right. One night, I had to check on the patients upstairs. As I was pressed for time and due to the location, I went to use the stairs. As I came around the corner to approach the stairs, I heard a light hollow metallic tapping followed by a sound of creaking. I looked up at the stairs and saw the light bulb was flickering and a shadow on the railing, which I initially thought was fading paint. I don't know why, but I felt scared, so I went around the long way avoiding the stairs. At the end of my shift, I asked one of my senior colleagues if we could get someone to change the lighting so that it was safer. He said that it had been brought up in previous meetings, but due to the upcoming renovations, it was unlikely that it can be arranged sooner. Then, he told me that the real reason why everybody avoids the stairs was because 5 years earlier, an inpatient hanged himself using his bed sheets during the night and was not found until the next morning. Since then, some have heard strange noises and saw shadows on walls and stairs that they could not explain. I don't believe in ghosts, but that scared me nonetheless. The renovation didn't happen as the facility was relocated closer to the main hospital. However, they sold the property to a developer who built an apartment building on the site. I still walk past the location and wonder what the new residents feel about the stairs, as I noticed that they kept the location of the stairs adjoining just the ground and first floor at exactly the same spot. This is not in a hospital but at an outpatient clinic. This happened to my psychiatrist, let's call him Dr. Walter. I was on my way to my appointment with Dr. Walter when my phone rang just outside the parking lot. The receptionist told me that there was an emergency, the clinic was shut down. Upon learning that I was just outside the parking lot, she told me to immediately turn around and leave, which I did. What happened was, there was this patient that had a history of paranoia and committed many violent crimes. Somehow, she was accepted for treatment at this outpatient clinic despite Dr. Walter's protest. Since the clinic was part of a large teaching hospital, Dr. Walter had to do what his superior told him. This patient was in the waiting room with other people when she went into a psychotic mode. She threw a fire extinguisher in the room at an elderly woman, then proceeded to beat up a teenager girl waiting for her mom. Her mother, who took her to the appointment, and a nurse practitioner who came out, tried to stop her. She attacked the nurse practitioner, grabbed a chair and hit the nurse. Other clinic staff went to call Dr. Walter, who was in session with another patient. Since Dr. Walter treated her, he tried to talk to her, upon which she ran outside to the balcony, on the 3rd floor. The doctor and the mom tried to calm her down. She instead said she wanted to jump off. She did jump off, but with the doctor and mother each hanging on her arms. She did not stay still and continued to move while dangling. Then she fell to the ground. She lied there, motionless, then she stood up again. By the time the police had arrived, they approached her, and when she did not listen to them, they pulled out guns. She grabbed the guns and tried to bite the officer. Fortunately, the officers managed to restrain her without further violence. She was taken into custody and did not return to the clinic. Dr. Walter's words to me: be careful in the waiting room. I can't predict how people will act. Don't try to do anything and just run. I am not a healthcare professional, just a mother. My very young daughter had become violent, uncontrollable and a danger to us both, biting, scratching, screaming, making weapons with household items. When her condition got even worse, I had to take my little girl to the children's psychiatric ward. Her first night there, she was still in the emergency area, not yet inpatient, and I was able to stay there with her. They have sparse rooms with a metal garage door that hides the medical equipment. You are required to put any personal items in that area, which they would then lock. Staff was super clear that you couldn't have anything but the clothes you're wearing. My daughter had a big outburst. I was asked to leave for a bit. When I came back, her room was cleared except for a mattress on the floor. They gave her a shot that made her sleep for hours. It was freezing in there, so she had a little blanket wrapped around her. I just sat there, in shock, watching her sweet little face while she slept and listened to what was going on in the other rooms. I hardly slept for the past week while trying to manage her downward spiral. So, at some point I dozed off, sitting on the floor with my back against the wall. I woke up to the sounds of wild screaming, like banshee screams of a little girl, half fear and half fury. Startled awake, my first thought was, is that my kid? Did she wake while I nodded off? I sat upright, looked over, she's still out cold. The screaming was coming from the next room, staff running quickly, screams from someone else. More staff coming. They closed the door to our room all but a crack. I heard bits and pieces of staff discussions. Why was her purse out? Where did the pencil come from? Where's trauma? Walkie-talkies blaring as a trauma team was on its way from another part of the hospital. It was cold. A mom had hidden her purse under the sweater draped over her arm. She kept it out for some reason even though it is definitely not allowed. It took her 11-year-old daughter a split second to grab that from inside her purse and stab her mom in the face and neck multiple times.